to Learning Unlocked. I'm your host, Britt Bingold. As an instructional specialist in Gilbert, Arizona, I'm a total nerd when it comes to classroom strategies and educational pedagogy. Educators are the key holders to unlocking learning for students. So today, as always, my goal is to provide you with resources and tools, the keys, to enable and accelerate learning for all students. Thanks for joining me today. Let's get started. Hey key holders, thanks for joining me today on Learning Unlocked. Today we are going to be joined by Sarah.munoz, and she is going to discuss student respect agreements, and I'm really excited to hear about this concept and this management strategy that she's been using in her classroom. But before we get to that, I want to make sure that everyone knows if you're listening to this, you can receive 1 hour of recertification credit. You just have to go to the digital PD page in the Employee Hub and you'll get more information. Sarah is joining us from Gilbert Elementary School. She taught 3rd grade and now she teaches 5th grade ELA and social studies. And she started doing this type of restorative justice kind of student respect agreements as a new management strategy right before she basically went into COVID and quarantine. So I'm so interested to hear from her. And what I love about this strategy is that even though she is ELA social studies, this is a management strategy that can do, basically it can be used across any content area. So I think that's awesome and fabulous. So without further ado, I hope you guys enjoy my interview with Sarah.munoz on student respect agreements. Hey Sarah, how you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm doing so well. I'm so excited that it's finally summer and it's actually not been too hot this week. So we've been able to sit out and watch the kids and not die of heat.
Right.
So that's been kind of nice. Yeah. I did give the listeners a little bit of kind of where you teach, what you teach, but I really didn't give them anything else. So if you want to just introduce yourself a little bit more so they can get to know you, that would be awesome.
Yeah, definitely. So I am going into my 6th year of teaching this year, which seems crazy to me because it's gone by really fast.
That's good.
Yes. Yeah. It's hard to kind of comprehend the fact that it's been this long, and I don't know. My brain is just all over the place right now. So it really wasn't until this past year when I made the switch from 3rd to 5th grade that I began to feel passionate about teaching. I think up until that point, I struggled with self-confidence and also this idea that maybe 3rd grade wasn't the best fit for me. And so it was really hard for me to enjoy teaching the way that I felt that I needed to enjoy it. Um, Now, I loved the kids and I
Of
loved
course.
my team. My team was amazing. It was really, really hard to tell them that I was moving on to 5th grade. But 5th grade has really been a blast and it's been an awesome experience for me. And I feel like I connect better with that age level. So we had a lot of fun this past year.
Yeah, I mean, I immediately knew I wanted to teach secondary, and people always thought I wanted to teach the little kids. They're like, "You're so peppy. Like, you should be teaching kindergarten." And I was like, "No, like, those are not my people." But you do kind of find your niche. I mean, I loved a mix of juniors and on-level freshmen.
Yeah.
So I think you have to find the age group that works for you. Otherwise, you do kind of burn out and lose your passion. And once you find that age group that works for you, then you're like, okay, I can enjoy this. I got my groove. So I think there's nothing wrong with moving around and adjusting when you're feeling not like it's a good fit.
Absolutely. I agree. And I probably would have disagreed with you like 2 years ago. But now that I have made that change, I'm like, yes, this is what people need to do.
Yeah, before you leave the profession, totally. Maybe try a different grade level or a different subject area if you can, or something different, because you came into the profession most likely because you enjoy kids and you
Yep.
enjoy teaching. And sometimes it's just a matter of figuring out what is the right fit for you in the realm of education.
Absolutely. I agree.
So are you going to relax this summer? Like what's happening? Are you going to float in the pool?
We have actually gone swimming quite a few times. We don't have a pool of our own, but we go over to my in-laws' house. They are nice enough to share with us, and
Same.
it's been amazing being able to have that time with my family that, we struggle to find any other, time of the year. So it's been really fun. However, being a teacher, I feel like my brain never really shuts off. So even when I'm relaxing, I'm always thinking about what's coming up and what's going to happen next and what it is that I need to really focus on to get myself prepared for the next school year.
Yep. Well, try to turn it off for a little bit, at least like a week or two. I know it's super hard, but you do need to have that like Zen moment. I
Yep.
hate when people are online like teachers only work whatever how many months, and I'm like, people, you don't even know. Like we can't even sleep during the
Nope.
summer or even during the school year because we're like too busy worrying about that kid or this lesson or this new concept or whatever. So yeah, try to
Exactly.
at least take a breath. Yeah.
I will try. I'm trying to. So, my husband John is working right now, so I'm getting some extra time with the kids, which is awesome. So we have two kids. Haley is going to be 8 next month, and then Luke will be 2 at the end of August. So we've been trying to, spend time with them, playing games. Before it got super hot, we were going on bike rides quite often, but since then we've kind of transitioned to swimming, and then we like to just lounge around and watch TV and eat food.
That sounds like what my family does. I have a daughter who's going to be 8 too. She's going to be 8 in August.
Oh,
And
nice.
then my son will be 4 in September. So
Okay.
I have a boy girl mix too. They have a 4-year split. But yeah, it's really hard to keep them kind of exercising in the summer. I feel like getting
Yes.
them out and doing things, and like really swimming is kind of the only thing. And we're trying to keep them to like people we know their
Hmm.
pools because we don't have a pool ourselves either. I mean, I have a blow up pool that we like have fun in or whatever, but I'm not comfortable going to the public pools right now, especially with my illness. So I'm like, guys, I'm sorry, because I usually take them to like Mesquite Groves or we go to different like public pools and have fun. But this summer's gonna be long. That's all I gotta say.
Yes, I agree.
All right, so let's get started with this idea of respect agreements. When you brought this topic up to me, I was like, "Oh, awesome! I love this. I've never heard of this. Let's dig into it." So, how did this start in your classroom? Did you read about it? Find it in a book, podcast article? Like, where did it come from?
So, this idea of respect agreements came from a PD that our principal put on for restorative justice practices. And it really falls under that umbrella. And it is one of the foundations to being able to be successful with restorative justice practices.
Okay. Could you tell us a little bit more about just because I think a lot of teachers don't know about the whole restorative justice practices. I mean, it's super new even for me. Like I've been just dipping my toes into this idea because it seems like it's a very large multi-year transition, I think, for schools, but it really is in replace of kind of punitive consequence and suspensions and punishments and that type of thing. Could you guys give me a little brief overview of that?
Yeah, and I'm with you. It's actually still pretty new to me. I just started learning about it this past year when we went through the PD with our principal. But a quick overview. So, this idea of restorative justice comes from kind of what we see in society with this school to prison pipeline and um, seeing that people are being punished for things that they do and not having that opportunity to repair relationships. So restorative justice, it's a process of repairing harm to all parties involved. So an example that I actually just read recently from Jennifer Gonzalez on cult of pedagogy is if somebody was to steal a car, they are probably going to go to jail, and they don't have an opportunity to make it right between themselves and the person they stole the car from. And so what we'd like to see with this idea of restorative justice is giving them that opportunity to say, hey, I'm really sorry. I understand that this affected you, and I'd like to be able to move on from here. And obviously, it's not that simple. That takes time. It takes a lot of building relationships, which in society is really difficult to do. So we really have to start in the classroom and show students that it's okay to be vulnerable and it's okay to have relationships with people, even if you are different from one another.
Yeah, and it's okay to mess up and say
Yes.
you're sorry. I mean, even as a parent, I do this all the time, right? It's so funny. Julia and I we had a play date yesterday with our kids, and we were talking about we're trying to train our boys. We have boys that are 1 year apart, and she was talking about, like, somebody said, maybe I don't remember exactly, but probably was mine. Miles probably hit Matthew, and and it was like, well, say you're sorry, and he said sorry. And then, Matthew would say, okay, or it's okay. And Julia and I were talking about, she's been reading something that's like, it's not okay. You shouldn't say it's okay. It's not okay to hit somebody with a toy shark. It's like, why are we saying that's okay? And so for the kids, even my own kids, to practice, I'm sorry for what, fill in the blank. And then for the kids to say, thanks for the apology. It really hurt, or it really did this, but I do forgive you. And so that it seems kind of like that in like little mini parenting version, but it's obviously going to be huge. And I like what you said about the pipeline of prison. That was something that really interested me with this whole idea is, you take kids out so often for punishments like suspensions or in-school suspensions or detentions or expulsions. And the more those add up, the less interest kids are in school, the harder it is for them to catch up, right? And then they end up falling super duper behind, and that leads them to apathy, and then they just start not caring. And
Absolutely.
yeah, so I think it's a huge topic, but definitely worth, if any of you are listening and you're like, wow, it sounds interesting. I think it's definitely worth a kind of a what do you call it when you go down like a internet hole or something, like to go down the internet hole and
Yes.
learn more about it, because I definitely, it's on my list for
Yes.
sure.
And it is a massive topic and it can get super overwhelming. So definitely baby steps and really have like a goal in mind of what you want to accomplish from your research, because if you don't, you are going to get sucked into that black hole of all of this information and not really understanding what to do with it.
Well, and not only that, but on top of, like, oh, by the way, there's a pandemic, so you
Yes,
have to do all these other new things, that we're going to have you do, whatever those things are going to be. Um,
exactly.
okay, so would you say that then did your principal decide that the respect agreement was like that first baby step?
Yes. So
Okay.
he did ask that every teacher come up with a respect agreement with their classes within a certain time frame. And there was a little bit of pushback of, well, do I really want to do this? Like, I already have my classroom rules. But when we jumped into it and got started, it was really amazing to see how the classroom community kind of changed and shifted to a more positive community, because with a respect agreement, it's really the students telling you how they feel and what they want to see happening in the classroom.
Do you feel like it's similar to creating like classroom norms, or do you feel like it's different than that? If is it deeper than that?
I I think it's a lot deeper than classroom norms. This is actually something that I was recently thinking about as I was thinking about this podcast. And there are a lot of teachers that at the beginning of the year, they do give students that voice in creating these classroom norms or these classroom rules. But this does dive a little bit deeper because the focus is really on respect and what that looks like to different people.
Okay. Oh, I like that. Like, that the word doesn't mean the same thing to everyone.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay. So you started it and you were like, I'm going to do it. I'm diving in because you're one of those people, you're one of those teachers who, you're passionate and you're ready to go.
hmm
So what was your first challenge? Like, which wall did you hit first? What happened that it was a pitfall for you?
Um, so my partner teacher and I actually did this together because sharing classes, we collaborated and we had a lot of similar things happening between our classrooms so that the students understood that we were working as a team.
Love it.
So we did this together. We jumped into it together. We brought all, I think, 46 students together, and we had conversations about respect and how it does mean different things to different people. And we really wanted to break it down and get an understanding of how they felt about the word and what they took away from it. So I would say the biggest challenge was probably the shift in mindset because we're used to having a set of pre-established rules for students to follow, and they come into school and we say, all right, here's rule one, here's rule two, or maybe you come up with them together, but they're
Hmm.
usually the same from year to year, or at least similar,
Or from class to class,
or from
right?
class to class, exactly. Whereas the respect agreement, it you're really allowing the students to have control over what it's going to look like, and you're giving them the opportunity to write down what they want to do to respect each other and what they want each other to do to respect them and how they want the teacher to respect them.
Mm.
And that shift of hey, now I'm giving you this opportunity to, tell me, like, am I being respectful to you as a teacher? And I think as a teacher that's really hard to do because we're so used to saying, here you go, like, this is what we want you to do, but now they're telling us, no, this is what we want you to do.
Hmm.
And they're holding us accountable also. They have the right to call us out if we're not being respectful in the way that we agreed upon. And that's really powerful for them, but again, it's that huge shift in thinking for all of us.
Right, and it's something you're gonna have to nurture as time goes on in the year. You're always
Yep.
gonna have those kids that are gonna be at the beginning of the year like, oh, they're gonna call you out as a funny haha,
Mhm.
and then that's a great opportunity for you to be like, yeah, you know what, thank you so much for doing that, and like have that teaching moment because I'm sure a lot of this is going to have to be modeled by you,
Oh,
um,
absolutely.
because they need, I mean, they need to see what it really looks like, as an adult. I think a lot of times as teachers we model behaviors, that actually hurt our classroom community and we don't even realize we're doing it. We want our students to do something, but yet we sit in a faculty meeting and completely do the opposite thing of what we wanted our kids to do. Or we talk to a teacher in the hallway in a way in which we would never want our students to talk to each other in the classroom. So I think kids are very intuitive and they watch,
Mhm.
um, and they can see, okay, if I can hold my teacher accountable and she's holding me accountable, this is now a community of a class and not just another class that I'm sitting in.
Yep.
Um, so that's awesome. I love that. So, okay, how do you keep all this organized? Like, is it a poster? Like, I can't visualize what it is. Is it like, are you buying a house? Like, are you signing something? Is it is it a poster? Like, I don't, what does it look like? Can you just like explain it to me? Like, how does it go when you give
Yeah.
it to them?
So, well, it's a little bit more than just giving it to them because
Okay.
they're creating it.
Okay.
So we go
Like in a
through.
Google Doc or like what?
Well, you can do it in different ways. It really depends on your personal preference as a teacher. I can walk you through the way that we did it.
Yes, please.
Um,
That's awesome.
So, with a respect agreement, there are four sections. So, there's students respecting the teacher, students respecting students respecting the environment, or some might call it property, and then there's teachers respecting students.
Okay.
So, what we did is we gave an overview and kind of an example of each of those sections to our students so that they could kind of have a clear idea of what we meant by, student to teacher or student to student. So, for example, like student to student are different ways that students can show respect to his or her peers. And so that would just be a list of, this is how I want to be shown respect by my peers.
Okay.
And so every student and even the adults in the room would need a piece of paper or you could do it in a Google Doc just as easily. And I think we actually did it in a Google Doc to start with, because we had the students brainstorm individually first, kind of what
Okay.
their expectation was in each of the sections. Um, but you could do it on like a 4 square as well. So folding the paper into 4 squares. And then label each quadrant so that they can clearly see, it's student to teacher, student to student, etc. Um, and then each student and the adults fill in the quadrant with what they believe shows respect for each category. And we kind of gave them, I think we told them, like, come up with 3 to 5 in each category so that they had a clear vision of what that would look like for them.
Right.
Once they were done with that, they came together with their house, and that would be the same as like a team or like table
Mm-hmm.
partners or tables. And they went around and they shared with each other what they wrote down in each quadrant. And as they were sharing with each other, they started to notice some commonalities. And then as a team, they had to create a list of commonalities that they really noticed as they were going through this. And so they had this final piece of paper that showed, okay, this is what our team really thought that respect should look like in each of these categories. And then they shared those out to the class. Um,
Nice.
and as they were sharing out to the class, my partner and we were kind of jotting them down, and we were making notes of anything that was similar between one group to another. And that's what ultimately became our classroom respect agreement, was that list of commonalities that we saw among the whole class.
Awesome. Okay, so we use the 4 square model, 4 square strategy, which is awesome, to
Mm-hmm.
kind of build out. And I really do love, and let's say those again, because I know teachers are going to be like, wait, what was it? It was the 4 sections were what? So we had student to teacher.
Mm-hmm. So student to teacher, student to student,
Okay.
student to environment, that would be like the classroom or the school or property,
Okay.
and then teacher to student. So how do students want us to treat them?
I'm interested. I mean, can you recall what some of the things were that they had in student to student?
Yes, I can. Actually, I have a picture of it that I can pull up really quickly to remind myself, because it's been a little while.
Yeah, I'm sure. And if you can pull it up and if you could send it to me, I will totally link it in the show notes if you don't mind.
Yeah,
So that
absolutely.
they can have like a visual of what they can do. Because I mean, what a great start to the year activity.
Mhm.
Um, when you're trying to really create that classroom culture. I think while you're pulling that up, a lot of new hires. I remember coming out of school and the big hot topic word was that we needed to create a safe classroom environment.
Yes.
And I just feel like right now in the current times,
Mhm.
the word safe is not appropriate anymore. I don't think these kids feel safe. Between gun violence and racial issues and a lot of the injustices that are going, I just think kids don't feel safe at school anymore, and it's really sad. But I think doing things like this, respect, what does that mean? That now we're creating a respectful learning space, and I think that you can replace the idea of a safe classroom environment, and I think it's more real for kids
Yeah.
because they know that. I mean, my daughter is 7 and she knows what a lockdown drill is, and she knows that at some point they might have to go down into this lockdown position because somebody can have a gun. She doesn't feel safe at school. I think a lot of kids do. And now we have a pandemic. So not only that, I don't feel safe at school because I can get really sick.
Mhm.
So I think having a respect agreement, I can feel respected at school though. And that should be a
Absolutely.
priority. Yeah.
Absolutely. And we talked about how this really kind of dives a little bit deeper than like classroom norms or classroom rules. And if you if you do it and you go through this process, you'll actually notice that a lot of the things that students come up with, you can replace the classroom rules with, because it essentially says the same thing, but
Right.
they're coming up with it on their own. So I'm looking at the picture right now. So
Okay.
student to student, we ended up coming up with 5 for each section, and you could absolutely do more. I was actually just reading on the Cult of Pedagogy that you might have new students coming in throughout the year. It's not a might, you will have new
Yeah.
students coming in throughout the year,
Right.
and they aren't going to understand this. So you're going to have to take the time to go through it with them, and then also allow them to add their own ideas of what respect means,
Oh,
so that they
interesting.
have that buy-in as well. So
Right.
it can be an ongoing list, and maybe things come up throughout the year that you might see need to be added to it.
Okay.
So we have one, give personal space to people and property.
Nice.
Two is use kind language. Three, listen when others are speaking. Four, help and wait for each other. So this was like, when they're working as a collaborative group or with partners, making sure that they're waiting and helping each other during that time, being
Mm-hmm.
patient. And then five, don't disrupt learning. So they came up with all of those, and there were more to it than that, but we tried to take what they said and combine the ones that were similar.
See, and I love that because really that's what all of those things are what teachers want from their kids. And
Exactly.
they probably already have them in their syllabus with their rules, but if the kids are actively involved in creating it,
Hmm.
is this something that maybe you would put up and then reference to often? Like, hey, remember, like they could see it.
Yep.
Um,
And oh, yeah. When I send you the picture, you'll see it's actually on a piece of chart paper.
nice.
And we had it hanging in both of our classrooms, and it looks exactly the same in each classroom so that they aren't confused by what one teacher wrote and another teacher. So it's very easy for them to understand.
Okay, and then keeping the students accountable to these. So now we have created them, we've all agreed on them. How do you keep them accountable? Like, are they, because we obviously it's restorative justice, so we're not going to be like, well, you didn't follow number 3 on the student to student list, so you're leaving the group. Like, what do you like? Kind of how do you how do you approach this in a way that is respectful of the respect agreement?
Yeah, so it's actually interesting because I was reading more about restorative justice this morning to just kind of refresh my memory and whatnot. And I got to thinking, and I thought, oh my gosh, what I was doing to hold these students accountable really contradicted the restorative justice in a way. And I'll go into that in just a moment. But what we did is we numbered each section. So we just went through, numbered them 1, 2, 3, and 4. And
Okay.
if a student was doing something that kind of went against what they came up with for that section, we would just put our hand up with that number. So I'd show them, 4 fingers, 3 fingers, 2 fingers, one, whatever. And I'd make sure I made eye contact with them, and they made eye contact with me, and they would see what I'm holding up, and they would understand why, because this is something that we talked about and we reviewed and we practiced. So they knew exactly what it meant. Um, and this is the part where I'm going to say it kind of contradicts the restorative justice is we would actually have them, if they were doing something that kind of went against that respect agreement, um, we would give them the opportunity to adjust the behavior. And then if they didn't adjust it, they would have to deduct a team point. And the reason we did team points, we had house points. Um, and this was their way of helping to hold each other accountable. So if they lost a team point, the rest of the group, kind of got a little upset, and they would just kind of say, hey, next time let's do better. Or sometimes they got
Right.
mad. It was a work in progress. um,
I know it is a work in progress. So
yes,
there's that balance because I hate the clip charts, like the clip up and clip down,
yes.
because I don't feel like that works. But I get it. Teachers need something
Hmm.
to hold these kids accountable. But I think you're going the right direction. So I'm excited for you because I think this is going to be, you can make it more positive for sure with this.
Exactly. And that's going to be my goal in the coming years, is to kind of stray away from that. Okay, we're going to take something away, but now let's really focus on how you can learn from this behavior and make it better in the future, or make it better. I guess it would be in the near future, because really what you want to do is hold them accountable for their actions, but really because it's impacting somebody else, not because you want to punish them.
Right. And have that conversation with them, maybe just one on one after you get the kids doing something and they're now that everybody's working, we can walk over to that kid and just have that kind of whisper discussion of like, I really don't want you to deduct a point from your team. Can you talk to me a little bit about what was going on and apologize to your team for what was going on. And I think that would be a lot because I do the team points too. And I would always, it was like, I stopped. I used to deduct points, and then I stopped because eventually, like, they would be in the negative, and
That
I was
or
like,
yeah.
"Wow, you really don't care about anything." Like, so that doesn't work. So I like this idea of having it be in a more positive way,
Mhm.
so that their teammates aren't upset with them. I mean, there's still that peer pressure, but it's you really and that kid restoring your relationship with the team and you as the teacher.
Exactly. And that's what we saw a lot of this year was students getting upset with each other and then having a really difficult time kind of moving on from that. So they'd get
Hmm.
upset and then, the student would go and do something again, which would then deduct another point, and then the team is just they've kind of just lost all hope at that point.
Right.
So this is our first year using the house points, so that's something that we have thought about and we'll be looking at for next year and making some changes as well to
Yeah, making some tweaks to say maybe we can't ever lose points,
yep,
as long as we're able to have a conversation with our team that is respectful and restorative. Maybe,
exactly, exactly.
and how awesome would that be? I mean, for them
Yes,
to have that conversation of even it's like we can go back to the toddler conversation of I'm sorry for this, and yeah, that sucked, and but we forgive you. We're gonna move on. Okay, so I'm going to bring up remote learning because I think it's going to happen again. And I just hope it doesn't. Like, I'm not saying it's going to, but if, obviously our cases are rising in Arizona right now again, because we're starting to loosen some of our quarantine rules. I'm just worried that we'll have a weird year until we figure this out, like an ebb and flow where we're in sometimes and we're out sometimes.
yep,
Obviously, this is going to be much better because instead of it starting at third quarter this last year, you're going to be able to start this from the beginning
yes.
this year. Do you have any tweaks in mind so that way you're ready to roll with a remote situation for the kids? Because I know a lot of students just kind of fell off at the end there, like, I just don't care. Um, you know, uh, it was a kind of a messy time for the kids and for all of us. All of us were a
Yeah,
mess. But yeah, go ahead and talk a little bit briefly. I know remote learning is not our favorite topic, but we got to be ready, I think.
I agree. It's probably actually one of my least favorite topics right now because it it was just sprung onto us so quickly
I
and
know.
not a lot of planning time and a lot of frustrations that came with it.
Right, for
Um,
kids and teachers. I mean, I'll
oh, for sure.
and for,
And parents.
even us. Yeah, even and parents. I mean, I did all of I was with you. I was with you. I was the
Yes.
parent and
Yep.
the person trying to make the things to help the teachers, and it was just yeah, it was a mess.
Yeah, it really was. It all worked out in the end, I think, ish, sort of, but
We we survived,
yes,
but
and
I think we need to now not be in survival mode. We need to be in prep and prepared mode. Yeah.
exactly. So thinking about the respect agreement, I'm hoping that we'll at least get to start the year in the classroom in some form or fashion, so that we can start to build these relationships and start this respect agreement right off the bat. Um,
Mhm.
Tweaks that I would make for remote learning, I'd really take what we had created in the classroom and then ask the students, how does this translate to our online classroom? Or, what changes do we need to make? I wouldn't make those myself. I'd want to see them making those changes and
Yeah.
having them kind of think through, well, if this is how I showed respect in the classroom, how can I take that and show, the same respect online? Maybe it means I'm I like with the whole brain teaching. I know you were in a couple of those trainings, how
Yeah.
he had us like in the camera, our whole face had to be there, top of the head kind of thing. And so maybe something like that where, we're not all sitting, giving each other or giving eye contact, but now we're on this computer screen. So how can we show respect in that way on the screen? Maybe it is making sure that the camera is right up front and center on our face and we're not distracted by other things that the teacher can't see because we're not there with them. Uh, so
I
I don't
also
know.
loved how he had them turn and talk to no one.
Yes, I love that too. I thought that was awesome.
That was really brilliant. And yeah, so we went through a whole brain teaching online training through a WebEx because it was like a Zoom. But we have a WebEx in Gilbert, and so just I think having those kids. I mean, if you started off teaching them that right away and then having them add to the respect agreement digitally, I think you would probably see them saying like, oh, okay, our whole class meeting needs to be like this,
Yep.
because a lot of the older kids did fall off at the end,
Hmm.
or even halfway through, of just not showing up to the meetings, and a lot of teachers lost a lot of confidence there, and it was really hard to watch from the outside too.
Hmm.
My 7-year-old is in first grade. She's like, I'm getting on this meeting. I mean, I felt for the elementary teachers kind of in a different way of like, ooh, now you have to manage all of that. But the older kids, it was different.
Hmm.
So, and respect is showing up for your teacher when she asks you to, if possible,
Right. Right. Exactly. And I think that this would be something that, like, I would probably want to practice in the classroom. Like, hey, we're going to get on and we're going to practice what it looks like to, make sure we're looking at the camera and make sure we're not distracted, and maybe having that turn and talk time to, whoever's next to us, whether it be a cat, a dog, a brother, sister, mom, dad, whoever, or nobody.
Right.
But that's something that I would definitely want to practice in the classroom, knowing that it could be a possibility so that they really get used to it. And then, like you said, adding that to the respect agreement of, hey, when we have this digital learning, this is what we're going to make it look like.
I love that idea. I just did a blog post and it was mixed reviews, and I knew it would be, but I just, I had to get it out there. Like, just prep your
Hmm.
kids for remote learning when you're in a face-to-face environment. I don't care how you do it, but that's a perfect example is, okay, if you have the opportunity to be in the lab, or if you have one-to-one computers, instead, we used to just kind of use them as these like weird digital worksheets or like a Kahoot every now and again.
Hmm.
I think now we have to blend that learning, and then we have to show them what it's going to need to look like in case we have to go remote. And I know, they have a realistic picture of what that looks like and how bad that can go. So I think your buy-in from your kids is going to be there because they've already experienced it. So
Absolutely.
I think putting our blinders on and going into fall, like it's just going to be, as it always has been, is a huge mistake. And I'm hoping it's not. I'm hoping that it goes well and kids stay healthy and everybody stays safe. But just in case it's not, I as a teacher would rather it be prepared in this situation than being thrown back on my heels again, like we were in the spring, for sure.
I agree 100%.
Okay, so you have them sign it, it seems like at the end. Is
Yes.
that something you do? Okay. So they kind of all sign the respect agreement. And then how do you communicate this to the parents?
So we actually did not communicate this to the parents because it is something that we kind of started late in the year and we were really just getting a feel for it. Um, With that being said, I think it's super important to communicate it out to parents if it's something that you start at the beginning of the year and plan on using for the whole year.
Right.
And I would even go as far as saying, "Hey, this is what we're doing at school. You should maybe try it at home.
Mm-hmm.
Create a home respect agreement." And I can tell you that's actually something that I did with my own kids. When
Oh, love it.
remote learning started, because we're
Uh-huh.
home and we're home with each other more than we've ever been home with each other. And, we're kind of like, ready to go crazy, and I'm pulling my hair out. And so finally I said, all right, this is what we're doing. We're going to create a respect agreement. And, like, if you're not consistent with it, it definitely loses,
Well,
loses
that's
its.
with anything,
Oh,
right?
for
Yeah,
sure.
you got to
For
be
sure.
consistent. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I will be honest, like, we weren't super consistent with it because it was difficult to be consistent with it. But had we been, I feel like it would have been very beneficial. We still have it on our wall in our kitchen, and so it's still something that, like, we see every time we open the pantry or every time we walk to the table. So it's there, and like, we are able to refer back to it, and I can say, to my daughter, who has massive sass and attitude right now, like,
Uh-huh, uh-huh.
hey, I want you to go read the respect agreement, and I want you to tell me, what area are you struggling in right now? And she's able to do that. And I feel like that would be something that would be beneficial for students to be able to do at home as well, because then it's consistent from the classroom to home, and it's helpful for everybody.
Well, and they can do like, myself to my sibling, or myself to my environment, my
Yep.
house, myself to my parent. And that is an easy transition to do. I
Hmm.
love that idea. I mean, I think that's like, that would be huge for kids. And I think that would help parents a lot too. I think going from spring break into quarantine into summer has just been exhausting. I mean, as a parent, especially, and then, parents working from home, and then my husband was working part-time, but now he's gone completely back. And normally it's fine. I love summer. We do great, like we have so much fun, but I think because I've had them for so long, I've run out of things to do.
Yes.
And I also, we had an ebb and flow and a great rhythm with schoolwork in the morning, and then we do this and blah blah blah. And without schoolwork in the morning, I'm like, I feel like now I need something in the morning. Like, I don't know. It's kind of like it's weird. It's just, the whole
It
thing is
it
super
it
weird.
is. Yes. And I would say, kind of going back to the respect agreement with parents, is if that's something that you're going to do, it really does fall under the restorative justice practices. So
Hmm.
if you plan on jumping, you know, into this idea of restorative justice and starting with that respect agreement, I would even communicate that out to parents as well, and say we want to kind of transition to restorative justice and give them an overview of what that looks like, because I think a lot of parents are like us. They, somebody does something bad, they want to see that person punished. So
Uh-huh.
if their child is a victim of, something that happened at school, their immediate reaction is, okay, what's going to happen to the other kid? Like, I want to see them
Hmm.
punished for what they
Yep.
did to my child. And so communicating this to parents as well and saying, we're really going to try and talk through these things. And that's not to say there won't be consequences, because there will be, but they're going to look a little bit different.
Yeah, and the conversation around the consequence will be hugely different,
Exactly.
right?
Exactly. Yep.
Okay, so we're getting to the last question. We're kind of about ready to wrap up, but we've talked actually a lot about the benefits of the respect agreement, but I was wondering if you just had a short story where you feel like you've seen this be hugely helpful in your learning space, in your
Yeah.
classroom.
Definitely. I think the biggest success for me personally when starting these respect agreements was students having the opportunity to hold me accountable. Because I think as teachers, we're constantly trying to hold our students accountable, but they never get to hold us accountable. Um,
Right.
and so, one of the things that I am like terribly bad at is rushing when I'm teaching. And I think it just comes with, like, I know I have so much I have to do that I'm just going to go, 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 go to get through it. And that is one of the things that the students said on teacher to student is not talking or teaching too fast. That was like the number
Interesting.
one thing.
Oh, wow. I mean, I would love to see, my students probably would say the same thing about me. I talk
Yeah.
so fast. Yeah.
Yeah. And so it was like an aha moment for me of, "Oh, okay, like, I know that I talk fast, but I don't always think about it while I'm teaching.
Right.
I just try and get through a lesson." And, so the
Well,
students.
plus you've got like Johnny's raising his hand to go to the bathroom, and then someone's coming in with the slip from the dentist. And, like, there's not like, it's not like you just have everyone is just in this peaceful Zen place while you're teaching either.
Right,
Sometimes I feel
true.
like people forget about, I love when I go sit in a classroom and I'm like, yeah.
Yeah,
Because it's like, you forget that it's not, you picture a classroom, and I think parents and people that aren't parents, everybody pictures a classroom maybe that they were in a long time ago, where all kids were in rows and they sat in their desks and they worked, and da, 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 and there was no interruptions. And it's just it's not like that. It's like, the phone's ringing and somebody's late and somebody forgot their lunch, and you've got to go, this person's crying in the corner because she got told something at recess. And there's so much. So yeah, you're talking fast because there are so many other things that you have to deal with. So for the kids to say
exactly.
that to you, wow, what a great buy-in. And wow, what a great wow moment for you.
Yeah, exactly. And it was really interesting to see how many students actually felt that way, because in the beginning, what we did is, we held up our hands to show them what area they needed to think about or work on. Well, they did the same for us. So if we saw that they had 4 fingers up, that told us, oh, okay, I'm doing something that goes against our respect agreement. So let me think about it for a second. And I'm like, okay, I'm in the middle of teaching. Obviously, it's probably talking or teaching too fast. And so then I'm like, okay, slow down a little bit.
Maybe go back and review.
Exactly. And so that was really helpful. And I think that that's very beneficial to students because they're not used to being able to hold teachers accountable. They're almost like probably scared to say anything, right? Because they don't want to get in trouble.
Right.
Um, and I think I will tell you, in my first couple of years of teaching, that would have been me. I'd been like, wait, no, I'm not wrong. Like this, I'm doing everything I'm doing for a reason, and you just need to, do
Sit and
your part in
listen.
the exactly. And that's
Yeah.
how I was. And
Me
it
too.
wasn't,
Yeah, that's how
yeah.
I grew up, and you sit and you listened. Yep.
Yeah, and it wasn't until, probably even this year when my passion for teaching kind of shifted and my focus shifted, that I really started thinking about, okay, it's not just about me. Like I need to think about my students and where they're at and why they're feeling the way they're feeling, and allow them to call me out when I'm doing something wrong or that they feel is wrong, right?
Right.
So,
Or as just impeding their learning process. And how awesome would it be for you to then all of a sudden say, oh, I need to insert a strategy because I've lost them. And
yep,
then you could insert something like a turn in talk or a think, pair, share because ooh, I was going too fast and they need some processing time.
yep.
I mean, that's like that just seems utopian to me. You know what I mean? Where the students are like, yeah, excuse me, I need some time to process.
Mhm.
For them to even be able to recognize that means they're on task, and time on
Mhm.
task is huge, for student learning and student growth. So if they're able to raise their 4 in the air and have you be able to look at the 4s and be like, oh, okay, what am I doing? Let's talk that through. Let me review this. And now why don't you review it with a partner really fast? And then let's get going. It shows you respect them just as much as you want them to respect you. And I think that's awesome.
Yeah, and that's the whole purpose of these respect agreements, is to show that it does go both ways, and students need to understand that, and teachers especially need to understand that.
And I think that's going to be hard for some teachers. I
Yeah.
think teachers will probably struggle with that. I mean, I would have probably loved it because I sometimes would wonder, are they there? Like, like their eyes are open, but like I don't know if anything's happening in their brain.
Mhm.
Like so I would have liked a student to say, hey, Miss Spink, like you need to, you know,
Mhm.
pause. Like, but I think a lot of other teachers might be like more, hey, let me get this through, or heaven forbid they use the word, I need to cover this.
Yep.
Listen, we got to stop covering and we got to start listening to our kids and what they're giving us. Their feedback is way more important than the
Mhm.
feedback we give them. So I think that's so cool. I love that.
Yeah.
Okay, so if anybody wants to learn more from you, where can they get in touch with you?
So super simple. I wish that I had a blog. It's something I've thought about doing, but I haven't.
It's
So
a
they
lot of
can,
work.
yeah, and I'm not there yet.
Yeah, it's
So they
okay.
they can email me through our school email address, which is sarah.munoz, MUNOZ, at gilbertschools.net.
Awesome.
And then I'm also on Twitter.
I like Twiddler.
Yeah,
Sure.
right? Yeah.
Yep.
I just recently got up and running on there this year, and my Twitter handle is Mrs. Munoz, one word, underscore fifth, the 5th, not the word.
Okay, and I'll go ahead and put that on the show notes too, so they have that
Awesome.
information.
Yeah, that'd be great.
And Twitter, is really where it is. I mean, where it's at for education. If you follow #EdChat,
Oh, yeah, I
it's
do. Uh-huh.
yeah, it's one of my favorite things to follow because it's kind of like, what is everybody chatting about in education right now?
Yep.
And so Twitter, I mean, it's so funny because a lot of teachers are on Facebook,
Hmm.
which is, I think, good for personal interaction with friends and family. I think Facebook groups are very good for teacher interaction, but I think Twitter is definitely, because of its hashtags, um, and and because of the expertise on Twitter is definitely where it's at. So
Yeah,
you're fine.
for
You don't
sure.
need a blog. You've got a Twitter account. You're good. So, well,
Excellent.
Sarah, I had so much fun talking to you about this today, and I loved learning about it. It's really actually made me think about just because I used to do team norms, and I like how you do this, and I think if I were going back in the classroom, I would totally do this in the fall. So thank you so much for sharing this idea of respect agreements with students, with the listeners.
Yeah, you're welcome, and thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
I hope you have a wonderful rest of your summer with your kiddos, and a good kickoff to next year, whatever that looks like. Yeah, have a good summer.
Thank you so much. You too.
Thanks for listening. I hope you've enjoyed this episode of Learning Unlocked and finding out more about creating student respect agreements as a classroom management strategy going into your school year. Just a reminder that we are on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at GPS Prof Growth. That's at GPS PROF GROWTH. For the show notes from this episode, please visit our YouTube channel at tinyurl.com/PGD YouTube and select playlists. You can also find anything from pictures, I think, from today's episode to a couple other little notes in our Employee Hub if you are a Gilbert Public Schools educator. If you have time to write us a review on Apple Podcasts, we would appreciate it. The more reviews and ratings we get, the more educators will see our podcast. So if you like what you are hearing and you think others would too, please head over and write us a review. I would love to read them. Thanks again, and have a wonderful day unlocking learning with your students.